of what happened to the UVA's men's basketball team in their first round NCAA tournament game against UMBC. We will discuss Virginia Tech's disappointing loss and what they need to do to be competitive in the ACC moving forward, and an interview with Mike Jones, Radford University's head coach, in approximately 15 minutes. And that all starts right now.
Running out of time, finally throws, and it is gone! Touchdown, Tyrell Roberts!
From 46 yards, Racky to win it. On the way, Ethan Racky, and he got it! James Madison survives!
Snap good, spot good.
It's blocked! Liberty wins it! Liberty blocked it! Oh my goodness! The Flames have done it!
360 in the contract, never that. I just take the contact, I bring it back. I'm running on the fast break, behind the back. Yeah, this that penny with the shack.
If he's passing me the rock.
This is Virginia Sports Report. We are now live and brought to you out of Roanoke, Virginia. We have got an exciting guest coming on in just a little bit. Mike Jones, the head basketball coach of Radford University, will be joining us in 15 minutes. We're very excited to bring him on. He is a fantastic coach. Took Radford to the NCAA tournament for the first time in his career. Very excited to bring him on. It's going to be a very good interview. We're both excited about that. Now, it is interesting, Chris. You and I sat here a week ago, and what did we talk about? Well, we talked about, Virginia Tech playing in the tournament, Radford playing in the tournament. And we talked about UVA, the number one overall seed going into the tournament. Number one overall seed out of any bracket was UVA. And then Thursday and Friday hit, and we're left with no teams left in this tournament. So the question is should UVA fans, should Virginia Tech fans, should Radford fans be disappointed? Chris, I hope you're doing well this evening. You're a Radford fan. Did you walk away disappointed after that loss to Villanova, or you feel pretty good about the future with the basketball team?
No, I feel very good about the future of the basketball team. Unfortunately, we're not the first team 16 seed to upset a 1 seed. But look, Radford has their first NCAA tournament win under Coach Jones, and so I'm very happy for that.
Yeah, now I'm going to get to something. The last show I did, we did a lot of rants. This show we don't really do as many rants, but I do want to open up with something because I thought it was very interesting. After UVA's loss to UMBC, there was a lot of talk about this being the biggest upset in college basketball history, and people even took it a step further and said, this is the biggest upset in sports history. And we all need to slow down on a couple of things here. Okay, one, this is not the biggest upset in sports history. It's not the biggest upset in college basketball history. This isn't even the biggest upset in UVA history. UVA had a team that had Ralph Sampson on it. All-stars were on this team. Not just Ralph Sampson. They had other players on that team that went on to play in the NBA. That team lost to Chaminade. Now, a lot of you are wondering what Chaminade is. I, like you, did not know Chaminade. It is a very private, small school, Division II school based in Hawaii. When UVA played Chaminade, they were an NAIA program, meaning they were not even classified by the NCAA. They were NAIA. They had 0 scholarship players. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Hawaii. It's a fun place to go visit. It's very difficult to convince a 16 and 17-year-old kid, you need to come live here and play basketball in a league not even classified by the NCAA. That team went and beat UVA when UVA had a dominant team. This year's UVA team started off the year unranked. Nobody thought this would be one of the top 10 teams in the country, much less the number one overall seed. They do not have an NBA player on this roster. It's one of the reasons I didn't think UVA would win the tournament. It is very, very difficult to win this tournament without an NBA player on your team. And despite all the first and second round upsets, I gotta tell you, this Final Four, you're gonna see a lot of Duke or Kansas or Villanova or Kentucky or whatever. It's going to look like your typical Final Four because this is when the better teams are going to start showing just how good they are. So UVA losing in the first round to UMBC, is it a big upset? Oh, heck yeah, it is. But it's not that big of an upset. Not what it's been made out to be. The other part about this that I do find interesting is, should UVA fans be concerned about the future? And I don't believe Tony Bennett's loss to UMBC is that big of a deal for Tony Bennett. I don't believe it defines Tony Bennett. But I do think there is something interesting about that game UVA fans should be aware of. I went and looked at that game. I also went and looked at UMBC in a game they played last year. Because if you want to go to UMBC's blueprint for how they beat UVA, you have to go to the CIT quarterfinal of last year when UMBC played another Virginia team, Liberty. Now, why do I bring up Liberty? Because Liberty, like UVA, plays a pack line defense. And I went and I looked at the stats. And shockingly, the stats for UMBC when they played Liberty and beat them in the CIT quarterfinal didn't just beat them, they beat them handedly. They put up 80 points on them. Again, Liberty, as a good defense, they don't allow 80 points to teams, just like UVA doesn't. UMBC shot 29 three-pointers and hit 11 of them. They had 16 assists in that game and only 11 turnovers in that game. That, by the way, 11 turnovers is very, very small. Not many teams only turn it over 11 times in a game. And then they hit 51% of their shots. Then I went to UMBC against UVA, what we saw Friday night. UMBC hit 12 three-pointers on 24 attempts. That's 50% for those of you not great at math. They out-rebounded UVA in that game 33-22. And they also had 16 assists. UMBC has figured out how to attack the pack line defense. Now, if UMBC had won this game on like a last-second shot or something, we could say fluke. But UMBC didn't just win it on the last-second shot. They won by 20 points. And it's not just the first time they beat a pack line defense like a drum. It's the second time they've done it that I can find. So this is the concern right now for UVA, is I believe other ACC teams are going to take what UMBC did Friday night, and that will be the blueprint for how you attack a pack line defense. Now, does that mean UVA basketball is going to completely fall off of the planet? No. For one, Tony Bennett is too good of a coach. And Tony Bennett comes from very strong bloodlines. His dad took over Wisconsin-Milwaukee and turned that into a very competitive basketball program. I don't think UVA is going anywhere. For two, even if teams know how to attack the pack line defense, it still took UMBC shooting 50% from three-point range to beat UVA. So this does not in any way define Tony Bennett as a head basketball coach. I think UVA will be just fine. Chris, you watched that game. It's one of the biggest upsets we've ever seen in college basketball tournament. Certainly shocking. 16 seed to never beat a 1. What did you take away watching that game?
Yeah, so I knew a 16 seed would eventually beat a 1 seed. I told you, I think off air, that if there was a year that was going to happen, this would be the year, just because there's so much parity in college basketball.
Right.
What I did not expect was a 20-point blowout. This game was over with 10 minutes left. I always thought it was going to be a team's just shooting lights out, and they just have the ball last, and they end up driving or making a three to win the game. I always thought it was going to be like that. And to me, no, I don't believe that UMBC gave a blueprint to how to beat Virginia. I think Virginia is going to be a 3 or 4 loss team for a long time to come.
I still think they'll be competitive.
Bennett is just too good of a coach. What I do find an issue is, if I'm a UVA fan, is the last 3 years we're out in the first weekend, twice to Michigan State, once to UMBC. This is becoming repetitive.
Well, and that's the question. Is UVA, can this system work in the tournament? Because I told you last week I didn't think it could work in the tournament.
You did say that. I don't think it's a system thing. So I give a lot of credit to coaches who have been in the tournament before, like Coach K, like Boeheim, who's winning games this year with a subpar team, like Bill Self, Calipari, these guys that have been in the tournament and have shown success in the tournament, because it's not what they're doing in the game. It's what time they're getting their kids up, the meals they're giving them, how they travel. They know everything that goes into before the game and how to prepare their team for that actual moment. And I think that's what UVA is missing, is how do we get our kids to this tournament and be prepared and focused on this game and not, hey, we're the number 1 seed, we need to be playing in 2 weekends from now. It's in the moment, and how do we prepare? That's, I think, the major issue.
Let's segue to this. Virginia Tech lost a close game to Alabama in the first round of the tournament. Now, Alabama's got that crazy good freshman that plays for him, Colin Sexton. Yeah, he's absolutely incredible. I watched that game, Chris, and I'm watching. I'm going, Virginia Tech's hanging with a very tough Alabama team that has an NBA player. Should Tech fans be disappointed with getting knocked out of the first round? I know Tech fans don't like it, but if we're looking at the future of Virginia Tech basketball, I think the future is still bright.
Yeah, I agree too. I think Buzz, and like we've talked about on this podcast before, is one heck of a coach. A little bit of a disappointing in that he's hurdled from being a subpar team with 2 conference wins in the last season before he took over, and 2 conference wins the first year of his tenure at Virginia Tech. Now, he's got that up to a winning record in the past 3 seasons, but they finished now 7th in the ACC 3 years in a row, going out in the second round now twice. But look, here's what I think Virginia Tech needs to do is take like a fraction, like maybe a 5% or 10% fraction of what they're spending on the football program and dump it into basketball, the facilities. They said they did a upgrade to Castle,
yeah.
But it really was not even close to what they needed to do. They put a video board and some sound in, and it replaced some seats. They need they need to make Castle their practice facility and just build a new arena.
Yeah.
That thing, and they don't have the prestige of Duke with college basketball to say, oh, it's got class to it and it's nostalgic. No, Castle Coliseum is not. What's the dump that Duke plays in?
the dump?
Yeah. It's not the same thing, right? So we need upgraded facilities. If you want to get the kids from Tidewater, if you want to be able to recruit in the ACC, the top recruits that you want to have to play for you, you need to put money into the facilities.
And here's the thing about that is, we talk about Virginia Tech pumping money into football. I totally get it. Football is going to make you the most money. But your football program, let's admit to it, okay? Let's be honest with each other here. The football team is not Alabama. It's not Ohio State. It's not USC. It's not Texas. Quite frankly, I wouldn't put it up with Florida. I wouldn't put it up with Florida State. I wouldn't put it up with Miami. All of those teams are capable of winning championship and recruiting athletes simply that just aren't going to go to Virginia Tech unless they're born and raised here. Okay, like Miami can go into Houston and get the best athlete in Houston. Virginia Tech cannot do that. So what I'm saying is if Virginia Tech is not going to be a top 10 football program over a long period of time, then why not pour some more money into basketball, kind of evenly distribute it, and let basketball enable Buzz Williams. Buzz Williams, by the way, at Marquette, tied for 5th in conference his first year, 5th second year, tied for 9th his third year, and then his 4th year it started clicking. They won the Big East, went to the Sweet 16. In his 5th year, they won the Big East and went to the Elite 8. Buzz Williams is just in his 4th year with Virginia Tech. This has been an absolute, complete, and utter rebuild at Virginia Tech. Marquette, he took over an established program. He did not get that with Virginia Tech. So I think Tech fans, you've got to be a little bit more patient, and you've got to be willing to put money into Buzz Williams because he is one of the best coaches right now in the state, and if you give him money to play with and you enable him to succeed, Virginia Tech basketball can go very, very far. All right, Radford's lost to Villanova. I don't really think it's a big deal. I mean, we all expected them to lose to Villanova, and I think watching that game, Chris, Radford couldn't hit a shot, and Villanova, their guard play is just absolutely incredible. I mean, I went away from this weekend thinking, I don't know that anybody can beat Villanova now. And I had Purdue in the Final Four, but Villanova looks like on a completely different level than anybody else.
Well, I think what they have that, I know we're looking forward to this interview, but what they have that's better than anybody else is leadership from a senior, and I think he's technically a junior, but
Yeah.
a senior guard, right? A guard that's been in the tournament and done it before, and that kid's just amazing. He's a great leader, so really looking forward to this interview coming up.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a break. On the other side of this break, we have Radford men's head basketball coach Mike Jones joining the podcast. This is Virginia Sports Report. We'll be right back.
There's nothing left to say. I know where I'm going. We're starting here today, and you know that right. You know that's right.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I liked things to always be the same. Anything new or different would scare and upset me. I was very sensitive to lights and sounds. It was almost like I had bigger eyes and ears than everyone else. So I built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. I didn't like looking people in the eye. It made me feel uncomfortable. I'd throw big tantrums over little things like when my socks didn't match. Sometimes I'd do the same things over and over. Until one day, I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
You can see signs of autism in children as young as 18 months. Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
He is the head coach of Radford men's basketball. He was just awarded the NABC District 3 Coach of the Year. Took Radford to their first tournament in a while, the first NCAA tournament he's been to in his career. We are now joined by the now legendary Radford men's basketball coach, Mike Jones. Mike, thank you for joining the podcast. How are you on this snowy evening?
Man, doing great. Doing great. Thanks for having me on. I'm only a legend in my wife's mind.
Listen, Mike, we really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to let Chris take it away with our first question of the evening.
Yeah, congrats on your award. That's big news. I saw some of the guys that you were named in the other districts, and those are some big names, so that's a big honor for you, I know.
Yeah, no, it's tremendous.
Yeah. So, but, first I'd just like to dig into the season a little bit. Last report I saw was you were picked to finish about 7th in the conference, and you end up winning the conference tournament and had, I think, a stellar year. Just tell us a little bit about how you did that with this young team. You only had 2 seniors. Kind of what was the mindset going in, and how did you get these guys playing to the level that you did?
Well, based on last year, we didn't have a much different team coming back as far as the league was concerned. They knew the guys that we had that played last year. We finished 14-18. I think we were 8-10 in the league, and so they thought we'd be pretty much the same coming into this year. But during the off season, me and the staff kept digging. We found a couple of gyms. We obviously had Carleek Jones sitting out last year, which, the people who do the voting, they had no idea what kind of player Carleek was. And so with Carleek added to the team, along with Travis Fields and Leroy Butts, that really helped our depth and made us a much deeper and better team. And then once we got into the season, man, we had a vision. Those guys bought into it. They worked really hard, and things worked out in the end. But it was definitely a long and arduous process.
One of the things I want to ask about, Mike, is the final shot in the Big South Championship. I mean, we go back to that game, that entire second half, it was like Ed Polite Jr., Scotty James, Polite Jr., Scotty James, just the entire second half. Then we come down to the last play, and there's a timeout called. And, we go to you, and Carleek Jones hits this big shot. Let me ask, was that a play? Was that planned? Or did you just tell Carleek Jones to make a play? What went on in that huddle that led up to that game-winning last-second shot to take you into the first 4 of the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, it was a pretty easy decision because Carlik had been driving by the guys pretty easily all night, and he is our best player at creating a shot, either a three, a pull-up, or getting to the rim. He's just a guy that can do it. And on top of that, he's unselfish, so if someone comes up and double teams him, he's going to find the open guy. So we just felt he was the right guy to make whatever play needed to be made. It certainly wasn't planned for him to pull up and take a deep three. I'm glad he did. I'm glad he made it. But we had a double screen set for him. They were going to slip out of the way, maybe create a little confusion and let him get a little driving lane. But, they did a good job to their credit. And, Carly just pulled up and made a better offensive play than their defensive play.
I want to ask about, Carlik and Ed Polite Jr. It's been well discussed about the leadership of those two, and you mentioned it there with Carlik Jones. I mean, neither one of these kids are seniors. Was there at any point a conversation that you or anybody had with them about they need to step up and be leaders this year, or was that just kind of something the entire team took as a mentality of these two guys are the guys we're going to go to when we need that type of shot or we need that go-to play? Where did the emergence of that leadership from Carlik Jones and Ed Polite Jr. come from?
Well, Ed's been our leader for the last couple of years. He played a lot as a freshman with some very talented seniors a couple of years ago and, got his feet wet. And then last year as a sophomore, we really gave him some leadership responsibilities. And, I didn't think, it was really fair of us to do that because you don't typically give leadership to a sophomore, but I thought he handled it well, and he got even better over the course of this year. And so that's kind of been his role for the last 2 years. Carlik, on the other hand, got a chance to sit out in the redshirt year, just practice with the team, get to know what we were doing, and get stronger. And he just kind of has it. He's one of those guys that I talked to during his senior year and discussed, the possibility of him coming in as a freshman, and could you be, one of the go-to guys, one of the leaders as a freshman. He always felt like he could. He has always had that kind of confidence, and so we felt as though he could do it, but we certainly didn't know he could do it to the level that he did it this year.
Mike, I've met you a couple times off the court, at some alumni events and whatnot, and you've got this cool, calm swag to you, and I think the listeners can hear it in your voice now. But gosh, when the ball goes up in the air and you're on the court, you're not quite as intense as Buzz Williams, your counterpart at Virginia Tech, but man, you're all over the place and you got sweat dripping down. How do you do that? How do you switch it on and off?
Well, I really, as I've grown more experienced as a head coach, I've tried to, become even calmer. I think the guys really feed off of my emotions, and if I get two up or two down, they tend to look at me as a barometer, and they do the same thing. So I've tried to remain calm, especially because we've had so many close games over the last 2 years. I've tried to remain super calm, especially in those pressure moments, so that they will remain calm. And I think they fed off of that, and they've got, great poise during pressure situations. But every now and then, man, my feathers get ruffled. I get a little fired up, and, I'm a competitive dude, and, I want my guys to be competitive. And so sometimes you got to get after them a little bit. So it's just a learned trait, I think, over those 7 years as a head coach.
Yeah. Joined right now by Mike Jones, head basketball coach of Radford. Mike, I want to ask you this. You beat Liberty and you're rewarded with a game before you can really even get to the tournament. You have to go play that first four tournament game against LIU Brooklyn. Let me ask you about that. Now, Villanova's given the benefit by not having another game. You, on the other hand, have to go to Dayton before you can even go play Villanova. So when you go into that game with LIU Brooklyn, are you 100% focused on that game in the first four, or in the back of your mind, are you kind of thinking and planning for what your team's going to need to do if you were to meet up with Villanova? What is that thinking going into a first four game like that?
I mean, there was this great saying that says, worrying is like carrying around an umbrella waiting for it to rain. And so if I were to think about playing Villanova and we've got LIU Brooklyn in front of us, there's no guarantee we'll ever get to play Villanova. So our focus has always been on the game at hand, the next game. And, we put all of our energy, 100% of our energy into LIU Brooklyn. They were a good team. They were playing really well at the time. And so it was going to be a monumental task just for us to get past them. So we didn't worry about Villanova until, after we knew we had beaten LIU Brooklyn.
Now, when you go up the game plan for Villanova and you're watching tape, I mean, Coach, that's some of the most unbelievable guard play I've ever seen from Villanova. I came away after the first weekend thinking that team is probably now my favorite to win the championship. They just look so talented in that front court. Now, when you watched them and you're game planning for them, what were you seeing watching their film?
Well, I see an extremely well-coached team. A team that is very disciplined on both sides of the ball, a team that's very unselfish with 5 guys that can make threes on the floor at any given time, which you don't see very much in, at any level. A team that deserves all the accolades. I think that at some point during the year, they were number 1 in the country. They beat us pretty handily. They turned around and they beat a very good Alabama team pretty handily.
Yeah.
This team is no joke. We knew that watching them on tape. We knew it was going to be a tall task, but we knew we were also going to go in there swinging and try to do our best to get a win. And unfortunately, it didn't work out, but we certainly loved the experience.
Now let's talk about next year as you go into next year. And Coach, I mean, first year winning the conference tournament, you're going to have a little bit of a target on your back. And let's face it, the Big South returns some good teams. I mean, Liberty's got a lot of good players returning, and Richie McKay is going to have that team ready to play. UNC Asheville has always been competitive, and you can always count for a team like a High Point or a Gardner Webb to get hot some point in the season. How do you go into next year? Returning a lot of your guys, Carlick Jones and Ed Polite, to highlight a couple of your players. How do you go into next season with that target on your back and keep these guys focused game in and game out?
Yeah, it's a different approach. We came into this year picked very low in the league and with very few expectations, and we used that as motivation for ourselves. We led the league for the first part of the conference schedule, so we were 7-2 at the midway point and in sole possession of first place. And so we played several games as with a target on our back, and I don't particularly think we did the best job handling that. And so we'll use that experience that we had this year going into next year. We'll be picked, I would think, probably second or third. I think Liberty will probably be picked first, but we'll be one of the teams that everybody's gunning for because we will be the defending champs, just like Winthrop was this past year, and we were gunning for them. So we just have to learn. I mean, you can't really draw up a real life experience in the practice gym or in the film room. You have to go through it, and we went through it a little bit this year. We'll learn how to deal with it as we go through it next year. But we're excited about that. We're excited about an opportunity to have a target on our back and learn how to play from that vantage point.
Well, listen, Mike, I really appreciate you coming on. You've been absolutely great. One more thing before we leave. I used to be the mascot over at Liberty University, so I'm going to ask one more question for you. Can you take it easy on my Liberty Flames next year?
You were a Flame?
I was the Eagle. I was Sparky.
Oh,
it doesn't make any sense. We're the Flames, but an Eagle is our mascot. Go figure.
Well, it's the American way. I understand.
Look, I've been beating them up over that for a long time, and so go Highlanders. And
Bruce Pearl was a mascot too at one point, so there's a future in that.
Oh, hey, there you go. I did not know that. Yeah, Mike Jones bringing the information today.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on, man, and all praises to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and good luck to you guys on your show.
Hey, Mike, I really appreciate you saying that. You have a great night.
Congrats on a good season. Great season.
Thank you so much.
Hey, that was Mike Jones, and what a better way to end the interview. He said he'd given praises Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I absolutely love that. That's one of the best interviews I've ever had. Really, really appreciate him coming on the podcast. Did not have to do that, and we were very thankful for that. That was really, really cool. One of the things that took away from that is they go into next season. We talked about Liberty's probably going to be the favorite for the conference. Not being biased, I do kind of agree with that, looking at the players they've got returning and coming in. But Radford's going to be right in the thick of things. Chris, I think looking into next year, the winner of that Big South Conference, whether that be Radford, Liberty, or maybe Longwood gets hot and makes a big surprise, you're looking at possibly a 14 or 15 seed, and that's really, where you could get a very feasible upset the first round of the tournament. What was your big takeaway from that interview with Mike Jones?
Well, he just, I mentioned it during the interview, but just his calmness and coolness off the court, and he tried to play it off a little bit. He is intense if you watch him coach.
Oh, yeah.
And really what I take from him is he gives it all to his players. He's clear-minded and he just has this calmness about him, but his players know that he's ready there and he's there for battle and to win. So I really appreciated having him on.
You talk about the year that they had winning the Big South going into the tournament. I mean, next year Radford could be very average and everybody would give him the benefit of the doubt. But, what he talked about was next year, there's a lot of things they've got to improve upon. And I thought that's a great perspective to have as a head coach. You just won your conference, and his focus is no, listen, we're not done yet. Next year, we've got to improve on these things. And this is the life of a head coach in college basketball, college football, is we just won. But if we don't focus on improving next year, then we're going to get, our heads bitten off by Liberty, by High Point, by NC Asheville, by, whoever. So you've got to constantly be thinking and staying one step ahead of your, local rivals in order to continue that success. I thought it was great.
Yep.
Really appreciate him coming on. All right. Any closing thoughts tonight, Chris?
No, I'm good to go.
Yeah, listen, it's so I really thought, this weekend we would have at least one team left in this tournament.
Disappointing. I know you're a big Duke fan. I'm a big Kentucky fan. Hopefully, if those guys win a couple of games here, they'll be playing each other in the national championship. So, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah. Well, I think next week we might actually have to start talking about football, which is the Southern way. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's March. Let's talk about football.
All right. Listen, I really thank you guys for joining us. We are Virginia Sports Report. Don't forget, by the way, you can go find out more about our podcast. You can go see different articles at virginiasportsreport.com. You can even have the opportunity to write your own article. That's right. Go to virginiasportsreport.com, click submit an article. You can write an article. It will go to me. I'm going to review it, publish it on the website. We may even talk about it on our next podcast, which would be absolutely fantastic. You can find us on Twitter, twitter.com/VA Sports Report. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and continue visiting our website and listening. We are, by the way, lastly, we are now available on iTunes. So here's what I want you to do. You got that beautiful cell phone, right? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. This is great radio, by the way. The people listening on Spreaker are going to love this. You see that little podcast app in the top corner? You're going to click on that. When you go to the podcast app, you're going to search for Virginia Sports Report, and you are going to hit subscribe. That way, every single podcast will go right to your phone. You'll get a little alert. You can click it, listen to us right then and there. So please subscribe to us on iTunes and let us know what you think of our podcast. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We will be back next week. This is Virginia Sports Report. Have a good night.
Watch me hit the gray button.